Good evening, and welcome to Conversations from Backstage. Tonight's guest is Evan Montgomery, and I'm very excited about this because we both came up in community theater here at the Backdoor Playhouse and at CPAC. Um, we were going to college together at the same time and kind of doing plays at the same time. So excited to see what he's been up to in New York as he's tried to do different things with his performing arts career. Hi, Evan.
Hey, Matt.
So as I said in your intro, you started here mainly with the back door, but you also did some stuff for us here, Shakespeare and Backstage. That experience, did that help you a lot in going on? Or was it just the jumping point, of moving on?
I mean, both.
Yeah.
My where I went to the high school in Tennessee was, there was no theater program, and our town didn't even have, community theater or anything like that. So the closest place we could go was like Nashville, which was a 30-minute drive, and for certain families could be expensive or whatever.
Right.
So I never got to do what I had always wanted to do, which was theater until I got to tech.
Mhm.
So it was definitely a starting off point,
Yeah,
like a
jumping
turning
point.
point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it definitely helped me because a lot of my friends that got to go to, these big art schools and become actors or whatever, they only got to do like one or two shows a year. And in Cookville, you had the Backdoor Playhouse, you had, CPAC, you had, what was Charles Theater?
The Wesley.
The Wesley, yeah. It
Mhm.
was like the Waverly as well.
Close, very close.
Yeah. Oh, that's the bar I drank at last night. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
um, but yeah, like, there was just so much theater, and really everybody kind of jumped around there. The directors, the designers, the whatever, and so people were really understanding. If you were in this show or that show, and were very understanding, and also the way they scheduled their shows. So I was able to be in. I feel like my whole college career was like something like 20 something shows or something like
I
that. Which is
yeah,
like
I wouldn't say
unheard
that
of.
that was wrong. I mean, there were
Yeah,
times where I know that you were in two shows basically at once. One was performing and one was
yeah,
rehearsing at the same time,
right.
which I did the same thing. So yeah, I
Yeah,
understand
all of
that.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh, it's really cool. So you did Suicide and B Flat here, and you also were in oh, what Shakespeare was it? Not
She Stoops? No, that's not
No, no, no.
Shakespeare. um,
Merry Wives of Windsor, wasn't it? You played
yeah,
the Frenchman in Merry Wives of Windsor. That's right. So you got some like classical training and stuff like that through us with the Shakespeare a little
yeah.
bit,
Which
and
was really my only, that was my only Shakespeare experience throughout college. I had gotten some classical experience through Mark at the back door,
right.
but yeah, that was my first like real Shakespeare experience, which was obviously is a totally different thing.
Yeah,
So
it is. Yeah, it's very much so. So then you decided that this is the thing that you wanted to do, and you got out of college, and you decided to go to New York.
yeah,
I mean, for me, I was here at the same time as you in tech, and I was a little bit different because I was like a non-traditional student, a little bit older. I didn't have the same drive to like go out and do something, and so I got lucky and got a job here. I can't
right.
imagine like going to New York to try and find jobs. Like how did you prepare for that, or did you just jump into it, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if I had known then, like a lot of the things I would have gone through, I probably would have never come.
Wow, that's interesting to hear.
Um, but at the same time, like, no one ever knows before they go do something. And,
Right.
and because I've gone through those things and I'm still here, like,
Yeah.
yeah, like it was the best decision I could have ever made.
Yeah.
So,
So you went up there and you tried to get some work, and I'm assuming you tried to get work in playhouses and film and pretty much anywhere you could get acting work at all, right?
I mean, my first was just like a restaurant job, dude. Like
Yeah. Well, yeah.
was like survival, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah, I assume that. I guess I meant
But
to
yeah,
continue your
yeah.
acting career. You just auditioned anywhere you could.
Yeah, I just found like in New York, obviously, there's a lot of different ways to go about the whole job, and um, ultimately, I guess I found out that there was just a lot of different places. Like there's like the Actors Connection and uh, Studio One and blah blah blah, which are basically a similar thing to a dance studio in the South, but for an actor.
Right.
And they would film things for you or whatever, and a lot of these people would be like producers on a show or casting directors on shows and stuff like that, and just willing to give you advice, and
Yeah.
it really created this like sense of community to be able to go out and audition. So that was one way of doing it. But then
Yeah.
there were getting a Backstage magazine and showing up to auditions and whether it be film or theater or whatever, and just trying to figure out, am I working at the restaurant today and can I make it to this audition or not? And yeah,
Just juggling all that and just trying to find any acting work you can at the time. Yeah. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So as far as I know, and I've not been in contact with you as well as I'd like lately, but when you first went up there, we were in pretty good contact together. And the first thing that I know that you got performance wise ended up not actually being an acting job, but it was a
Yeah.
performance job in gymnastics. Gymnastics performance art, I guess, would be the best.
Well put, yes.
Yeah, okay. Gymnastics
Maybe
performance
people
art
have a
then.
hard time describing what that company was. So.
Yeah, okay. And they were called Streb, right?
Streb.
Yeah.
Yeah. STREB.
Yeah.
Streb.
So like because that's such an I looked them up as soon as you said that you got a job with them because I was so excited that you had something going in the performance arts
Yeah.
or whatever, and I was like, this is crazy. But I always wondered, and I never really kind of like did like your experiences here, like learning how to perform and training and all that kind of stuff. Did that help with that? I know that you trained in gymnastics here as well, and before you ever came here, you did all that because you were a
Right.
cheerleader at Tech and cheerleader before that. But then, like, did that help with the performance part of it?
So I was gonna say, as far as the physicality of the job, that all came from like previous things.
Yeah,
But as far as the auditioning and the talking to people, yeah, like the performance part of it,
yeah,
like that. Had I not gone through those processes of auditioning for shows at Tech or what was it? Now I can't remember, and you're gonna have to remind me. But is it SETCs
yes.
that you would like go and audition at, or no? That
You would go
was
to TTA and audition there, and then possibly go on to SCTC. Which one year I believe you did get go on to SCTC and do their auditions there.
yeah, that was where I had actually gotten my first acting job in a like regional theater,
Right, right,
which
yeah,
was in New York State, but not in New York City. But
yeah,
yeah, so that was kind of where where you would be able to get those jobs, and
yeah.
it was just a good thing. So,
Cool.
but
So the strep, and I'll actually probably put a clip or two of things that turned out to be a really big thing for you. You ended
yeah,
up going to London for the Olympics and
mhm,
doing some stunts and things there.
yeah,
Stunts, I guess, are the best, but doing some things there and actually working and doing all that. But then your knee got
yeah.
hurt. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I had like 2 years with Streb. So
Mhm.
my first year was like basically like a half year of like rehearsals in New York, and we had basically just getting used to. Basically, we knew that our job was going to be to go to London to perform for the Olympics, and that we had these specific things. It was called One Extraordinary Day, and it was
Mhm.
basically to like celebrate the athletes. It was sort of like a opening ceremony in
Yeah.
a sense, because the ancient Greeks used to celebrate the athletes coming in through artists, and they
Right.
would clear the air for the artists or whatever. And so that was like kind of what we were a part of. And yeah, so it was like 6 months here, rehearsals kind of thing. Then we went like 2 months in London, a month and a half of rehearsals, and then we just like had a performance and left because it's the Olympics and that's what you do.
Yeah.
But then the company like rehired us for New York City has a festival every year called Fall for Dance, and it's like a week-long festival of just dance pieces all over the city, and they hire like all different types of dance companies, like Alvin Ailey and whatnot. And then that year we got hired to do a piece called Human Fountain, which is like where you dance, we like fall off of, like 3 stories of scaffolding onto these mats, and it's
That's
crazy.
actually one of my favorite pieces that I looked up. I thought that was really cool. I watched it for like an hour. It's not even that long when you see the piece, but like I kept rewatching it because it was so
I don't think
mesmerizing.
there's like a version of like a full version of it even online. Like I think it's only like a 5-minute version, but I think the full piece was 18 minutes long.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's pretty intense. But yeah, so we did Fall for Dance, where we opened up for like New York City Ballet and I think it was Paul Taylor's dance company, which is a big name, and I believe Alvin Ailey was there too. So that was kind of what happened. That was my like 2 years of experience with them, was doing those two performances, and then I taught for them as well in their space, and then that was after that 2 years I hurt my knee and kind of had to figure out some other stuff.
So, from what I know now, you've kind of taken a twisting career in the performing arts, which is cool. I mean, I've always been of the mind that if you haven't done everything in theater, you haven't done theater right. Because I enjoy doing everything, and I think the more you know about everything, the better you are at any one job that
you're 100% right.
And so, with the knee getting hurt, you ended up a friend asked if you wanted to help with a tour of Friends. Is that a musical?
Yeah.
I can't remember what exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Friends the musical. I thought I was wrong. That's why I made that face. Not that that would be a bad thing, but I was like, isn't that right? That almost sounds like I'm making that up. So they asked if you wanted to do some backstage work as a carpenter. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically I'd been doing like gardening work for a long time and learned some construction stuff through that because I'd become a project manager and learned a lot of different like trades, skilled trades or whatever you want to call it. And I basically was like, oh, I could be like a prop master maybe or whatever. And luckily a friend called me and asked me, actually I got asked to be a head carpenter.
Yeah.
Which I was completely not ready for, and I got the job. Luckily, it was a very small show, and it gave me the opportunity to learn a ton. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was kind of what I started out with, Friends the musical parody.
Musical parody. So it actually was a parody. So
yeah, it was a parody of the show, and actually it taught me a lot about smart writing because apparently, you can kind of plagiarize and get away with it.
Well, there's actually a funny thing is that there's a parody law that you can use.
Yeah.
Like, it's how SNL gets away with their skits and stuff. As long as it's like making fun of something, you can use a lot of the same things without having to pay for rights and things like that.
And it's crazy, like some of the things you can use and the things you can't use, and it's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's really neat. It's really neat. I don't know why I was looking that up, but I was just reading about that the other day. Is the parody stuff how you can get away with doing that and stuff. And so when all this COVID craziness, I don't know what else to call it at this point, hit, you were part of another tour though, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Was it the same play or was it a different play, right?
Yeah, that was a totally different company. I got hired by Networks, which is one of the largest like companies actually as far as theater productions go, especially like touring companies.
Oh, cool.
And the only reason I say that was just to like differ from like the fact that the tour that I had before was like a very small tour.
Right.
Like there were nights we didn't even play theaters. Like we played comedy clubs in certain towns and stuff like that. So and but the last tour I did was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was the Broadway version that was touring around, and that was a huge show. And
so we've kind of went over things in previous shows about like how we do things here and this and that, but for like people at home, What's it like to be like? Because I mean, this is a rental house. We might have a touring company come in here, or we might have local companies and things like that. It's a totally different feeling. Or at least I think I've never been part of a touring company than when you're working and you're taking something somewhere else. So,
Yeah.
do you mind just kind of like giving some a day in the life of a touring a person?
Yeah, I mean that can differ obviously depending on what kind of contract you're on and how big the tour is. Like I was saying, like being on a smaller tour versus a big tour. But
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, you're on the road for most of the time, anywhere from like 3 months to a year. Luckily, the last tour that I had was really good because it was basically you would go into a town and you would stay for like a week,
Hmm.
and then you would move on to the next town, or even 2 weeks sometimes. And it was mostly major cities, and we flew everywhere we went. We didn't have to take buses, but
Oh,
like the
nice.
smaller tour that I took before, like we took like sleeper buses that were like 12 like bunk beds stacked on top of each other with a bathroom and whatever.
Yeah.
So it's definitely different, especially when you go into the house. It's kind of assumed, I guess, that like the road crew is more like in charge, especially if you're in like a position like I was in as head props, which
Hmm.
was what I was on for Charlie. And so it's kind of different to kind of be like the manager when you walk in. Like you're walking into these people that you've never met that like are working at a house like CPAC,
Yeah.
and you're kind of having to be like, hey, this is what I need you to do or whatever. And
Yeah. I've been on
and
the
you
other
might
side
be
of that when Alvin Ailey came in, which
yeah,
that you were basically the person that I was talking to and trying to get everything
exactly.
ready for them
Yeah.
beforehand. So yeah, but I always wondered what it was like on the other, like where you're coming into these new people all the time.
Well, it's scary. It's scary, especially if you're new to the job like I was. Like there were people that I was meeting. Like when I went to Miami, when we opened in Miami at the Adrian Arch Center, which is like this massive house. Like
Yeah.
they did opera in rep.
Oh
Like
wow.
like they could change out their show. Like anyways, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And and there were people that had been working there for like 20 or 30 years, and
Yeah.
like had been head props for that long, and like their dad was head props on like film in Miami before, like. And so it really taught me a lot of like like don't pretend like you know everything, and like
Right.
ask questions, and show respect to the people that have been there.
Yeah.
Um, and I learned a lot from those people. Like
Yeah.
I'm happy that I didn't take it that way. Like some people can, because it can be stressful being on the road and like being away from your family or your friends and your home, and
Yeah.
not getting to see people that much. Like it can get really stressful, and so it's nice when that can happen.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really interesting because it was my first year here when Alvin Ailey came in, and Alvin Ailey is just freaking huge. And like they came in and they had given me a light plot to learn and put up for them to before they got here, and like I had emailed back and forth and tried to get all this stuff done, and then they get in and it's still wrong. And so I
Yeah,
learned the same thing, because these people have been doing this all the time. It's like I just
yeah,
like, look, I don't know. I'm trying to do the best I can. Can you help me out? And then
yeah,
we got it done, and it was amazing. It was
yeah,
some of the best things that I've seen here.
yeah.
Um, but that's really cool. It's really interesting, I guess, to see like you
Right.
as a newbie going into these places, and then me as a newbie when they came in to the place, and
Yeah.
it's all these experienced people doing it. So
Mhm.
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Evan. This has been a really cool look into like
Thank
because
you.
you're one of the few people that have like traveled out and done this in other places that have been here too. So good.
Yeah.
It's really good to talk to you. Thank you for doing
Thank
this.
you. You too. Thank you for having me.